Is Australia about to face a 5-year recession? Let's have a look. Good morning, everyone. Florian.heise here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. I have my morning stein of coffee, and I thought we'd have a look at an article from news.com.au that's discussing Prime Minister Scott Morrison's warnings about the next 5 years. Are we facing a recession? Is this the roundabout way of saying Australia is facing 5 years of recession? Or will it be a prolonged and deeper depression? Let's have a look. Now, I've also changed up my camera angle a little bit here. Let me know what you think. One of the difficulties in the way I'm recording is I'm just approaching it as, quickly switching on the camera to having a chat between doing real work, drafting. So I've got all my computer screens in front of me, and positioning a camera is quite a challenge. Let me know if you prefer this. And those of you that never actually know what I look at and just listen to it as a podcast, keep enjoying it. So let's have a look at this article, guys. Let's have a look at this article. And let's just remember, let's wait till we start hearing our leaders say the R word, the recession word. Prime Minister Scott Morrison warns to brace for 5 years of economic pain, guys. 5 years of economic pain. How the rhetoric has changed over the last few years, hasn't it, everyone? 5 years of economic pain. How is that going to affect the political landscape here in Australia? I think it's going to be quite interesting. Aussies should brace for up to 5 years of pain as the economy gets off the medication of handouts, the PM will warn in a key speech. Well, yes, that's the problem. You don't want your economy addicted to these handouts. We're already getting the situation now where people there is a welfare trap built into Job Seeker with the bonus. There's a point where it'll fall off the cliff and you are actually earning less, receiving less money for more work. That's the problem with all of these situations, because people aren't stupid. People are not stupid. They're not going to reduce their quality of life. They're not going to, have work themselves to an earlier grave for less money if they can avoid it. I mean, that makes perfect sense. But here's the thing. Here's the big problem fundamentally with a lot of the libertarian ideals. They can't give you anything except self-respect. And a lot of people want free stuff. They want equality. They want the government to step in. They want everything to be fair. So it's going to be interesting to see how they wean people off these handouts and what effect it'll have in the next election. What if, the opposition, who I can't say are being particularly impressive, but what if they come out and say, we'll introduce UBI, Universal Basic Income. That's just the next step of what we've done. What do you think? And the UBI, it sounds good in theory, like all things do. But the problem is, and we all know it, guys. We all know it. Everyone who's arguing for the advantages of UBIs, that means we could simplify the whole welfare system. What will happen is there'll be UBI, then there'll be UBI plus. Oh, these people need that little bit extra, guys. They need that little bit extra. Then we'll have UBI plus 2. And then we'll have, for the regions, they'll need extra UBI than everyone else. And then we're back at the same mess. Do you think I'm being too cynical, guys? Or maybe I can predict the future. Scott Morrison will pledge to get the economy out of the intensive care unit with a grim warning that companies need to get off the medication of handouts like JobKeeper. Okay. Now, here's the thing. He's like a drug dealer. They've introduced these businesses to this stimulus handout, and gotten them in some ways dependent on it. This is what happens when you take the softer approach. This is what happens when, you've got a generation of super duper investors that are getting let off by the banks. What happens when you pull the rug out from under people? What happens when you pull the rug out from under these businesses? Will that be politically possible? That's the real question, guys. Will it be politically possible to do this? Now that a precedent has been set that the government can intervene this much in our economy, and force everyone to, shut their businesses, and then just hand out to prop it up, it's going to be interesting to see the debates that rage at the next election. The brutal message is set to dash hopes that the Prime Minister will bow to pressure and extend the wage subsidy scheme to more workers who missed out on the $1,500 fortnightly payments. The Prime Minister will outline his plans in a speech at the National Press Club on Tuesday, focused on workplace reform, TAFE and training. But in the short term, his simple message is, expect more pain. Well, at least this is a step. This is a step to acknowledging that tough times need to happen. And I know people don't like tough times, but often, individually, we can all attest to the fact that when you've gone through difficult times and you have emerged as a stronger person, you've learned something new. You know, you've come out of a unpleasant situation with new skills, new confidence, new capabilities. I'd argue that's no different for a civilization. That's no different for a nation. It's no different for a people. And perhaps this is the time for a generation to go through that here in Australia. We've had it very good for a long time. At some point, you've got to get your economy out of the ICU, he's expected to say. You've got to get it off the medication before it becomes too accustomed to it. We must enable our businesses to earn our way out of this crisis. That means focusing on the things that can make our businesses go faster. Well, I'd have one suggestion. Reduce the burden that you place on businesses. Get rid of the red tape. If you haven't gone through just the pain of employing people and the processes and the paperwork, this is why I'm not surprised at all at the prospect of a massive paperwork stuff-up, screwing everything around. So, he will now outline a new workplace reform agenda that could offer workers more flexibility in the post-pandemic economy, including for women who have been hit hard by the shutdown. I mean, well, you know, we have to say things like that in this gendered world we live in now. Mr. Morrison will warn Australians that the roadmap to recovery could last as long as 3 to 5 years, with unemployment getting worse before it gets better. Now, to those of you that have been following my channel for a while, none of this will be a surprise. Employment getting worse, getting better, a 3 to 5 year recovery. It's something we've been talking about, looking at the articles, just looking at the Roy Morgan unemployment figures and comparing them to what's coming from the ABS. But I bet you guys, there are going to be some people that this is the first time they hear considerations like this. They hear rhetoric like this. They hear warnings like this. Just think about that, because there will be. You know it. You know it. Die-hard uber-liberals that only ever listen to what Morrison says. Mr. Morrison's speech follows revelations that demand for JobKeeper is much lower than expected and is now supporting 3 million workers, not the 6 million jobs promised. As a result, instead of costing $130 billion, it will cost taxpayers $70 billion. That's fantastic news. I'm hoping those people just haven't all gone on to JobSeeker, but potentially saving future generations from having to work down that debt and pay it back in tax is good news. Mr. Morrison will firmly reject calls for the government to be at the centre of the economy with prolonged and higher spending. And that's going to be the point of difference coming into this next election, guys. I think that's what we're going to see. That's what we're going to see. But I don't think Labor is smart enough to take advantage of it in innovative ways. I can see them just doing the same thing again and again. What do you reckon, guys? What do you think? JobKeeper, JobSeeker, and our business cash flow measures, amongst others, have provided the vital economic bridge for so many businesses and workers, he will say. This economic bridge, they keep bringing that up, don't they? That's the... I don't know, does that inspire you with confidence, the idea of a bridge to the future, a journey we're overcoming? I guess not as persuasive, particularly some American persuasion experts, shall we say. More than 5 million Australians are already directly benefiting at a now anticipated cost of more than $150 billion in just 6 months, all borrowed against future tax revenue. These supports can, of course, only be temporary. It was William Green, the leader of the American Federation of Labor during the Great Depression, who said in 1934, "We cannot indefinitely support 1/6 of our population on money borrowed against future taxes." The Prime Minister will warn, emerging from the pandemic shutdown is riskier than the lockdown itself. Success in this current phase will not be easy. It cannot be assumed. It will not be business as usual. Opening up will be harder than closing down, he said. Well, there you go. So I would argue this is a warning that we're not going to get the V-shaped recovery that everyone is hoping for. Of course, opening up is going to be harder than closing down. Did anyone not think that? Maybe some people didn't. We'll all have to retain to live, or retrain, to live and work in a way that creates a sustainable, COVID-safe economy. Oh, wow. I hate that. I hate that at all. Retraining us. I don't like that term. I thought we were meant to overcome this. We should adapt. All of us are in uncharted territory. There will be inconsistencies and frustrations. There will be trial and there will be error. During this time, we can also expect unemployment and underemployment to rise before it falls. Debt and deficiencies will rise sharply as costs rise and revenues fall. The Prime Minister said the budget, now due in October, will be stark. A historic deficit, which not for the crisis, would now be in surplus. Debt rising above 30% of GDP, he is expected to say. Unemployment at around 10%, global trade expected to fall by up to 1/3. Arguably the most challenging environment this country has ever faced outside of wartime. But we should remember that these difficult times are not the product of economic failure, but a global health pandemic. The problem was not the economy. Okay. I know that's why he sees it like that. I'd contest that. I'd say the economy is too dependent on property, too dependent on exporting natural resources. Sure, it was fine while it was going on, but the problem is, a bubble or any disaster could burst that bubble. Could burst it. Top of the Prime Minister's agenda is overhauling the nation's workplace relations law to encourage bosses to start hiring staff again, and the economy reopens from the pandemic lockdowns. Now, this is interesting. Just remember this here, because I've done an interview with Stuart Bonds regarding casual employment in the coal mining industry. And I'll put that up in the next few days. I'll just have to massage some of the audio. But just remember this here, where they're looking at overhauling the nation's workplace relations, and keep that in back of your mind when you see that interview, particularly with regards to just the web of issues that court case has brought up. I'm all for workplace reforms. I would argue you need to make it easier to let go of people. I know that sounds counterintuitive, everyone. But as a small business owner, and we cop it more than anyone, it's a big investment taking someone on. It's a big risk, particularly if they're useless or if they've got attitude or if they don't fit in your culture. And you can just say, just do a 3-month trial. Technically, you can't do that. You need to have 1 3-month contract and then renew it again. After that period, you need to have it twice. It needs to be easier to not jump through all the hoops, guys, because there's a lot of cost associated with it. And if you haven't hired someone and then had to fire someone useless, you haven't experienced it, guys. Mr. Morrison said he wanted to better coordinate the subsidies, loans, and other sources of funding for TAFE and training. A national hospitality agreement provides a good model for the changes we need to make, incorporating national efficiency pricing for training and activity-based funding models. That will be a real step forward, he said. This is a system my government would be prepared to invest more in. Well, do you think investment in TAFE and training is worth it? They're pushing it here in Queensland, but the problem is, if there are no jobs for those people when they get out, what's the benefit going to be, guys? You'll get all these people that have got these qualifications, but nowhere to use them. So here we have it, everyone. The potential for 5 years of economic challenge. What do you think? Do you think Australia's heading for a recession, or are we going to have a depression worse than we've had in the past? As always, please let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you're a fan and you'd like to support us, there are a few ways you can. You can join the channel on YouTube or Patreon. You can support us via our affiliate links at Amazon or eBay or Independent Reserve and Kucoin. You can buy our merch from HeiseSays, You can support us using the Gold Pass app from Perth Mint, or also via PayPal. Take care, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.